Hello, and welcome to the Airing It Out podcast. My name is Sam Sage. Thank you for joining us. Now, this show is about all things mental health and well-being, and our intention here on this show is to empower the hearts and minds of people, to educate through experience, and to cultivate a community of conscious well-being. And I know that sounds like a lot. From the offset, you might be thinking, you just said a whole lot of words, and I don't really know what a lot of them mean. So one of the things that we're going to try and do here today is just to give you an introduction to the podcast, get you settled and caught up to speed, something that I've been thinking is like, yeah, I know what this is. I know all the details. I'm comfortable with this. But you might be thinking, who the hell is this guy? Why are we going to listen to some strange guy talking about mental health and illness and well-being? And we're hoping with this episode today that we can just talk you through some of the things that we're doing, have absolute transparency, and hopefully we can be on the same page moving forward together. Mental health and illness is steadily becoming an epidemic, and it seems, although there is a fight against it, there are people pushing back. It seems to be that we are given more and more reasons to keep our thoughts and feelings to ourselves, to not talk about them for fear of judgment, or to perhaps care too much about what this person or that person may think or feel about us and the things we might have to say. There's a lot of inherent danger in keeping the things that you want to share with the world, the feelings that you have and the thoughts that you have, to yourself. And what we're trying to do here on this podcast is show you fundamentally that it will always take far more strength to be open and vulnerable about your feelings and emotions and thoughts than it ever will be to bottle them up and to keep them inside. Something that I think has been entirely damaging to men, young men in particular. That's a perspective where I come from. That's where my history lies. And so that's one of the places which I can speak to the most. Is that the idea of that a man should be this strong and silent individual, and that a man ought to go out, get the money and come home and deal with the responsibility of a family. But we're seeing in our day and age that the role of a man within society is changing, and I think young men in particular are having a difficult time adapting to that. So what we're going to do here on this show is share with you skills, experiences, and things that have helped us and people throughout history in fighting your own corner, in picking yourself up and meeting the day each day, and giving yourself a reason to keep going forward, keep pushing forward, and keep doing something worthwhile, worth your time and your own respect, as well as everybody else's. But we want you to do right by you here on this show. So when we talk about educating through experience, what we mean by that is, one thing that I've noticed is that somebody who is going through a difficult period with their mental illness or their mental health, where everything is so circumstantial, everything to them is so personally interrelated. You have a relationship with one person who might be causing you a problem, or there may be something which you relate very complexly with, which causes you a lot of grief. And to you, because of how unique those circumstances are, you might feel so utterly, terribly alone in your suffering. You may think, this is so unique to me, how can anybody ever understand what it's like to be in my shoes? And while that is true, nobody knows exactly how you feel. And nobody could know, because nobody's going to be able to comprehend just how specific those circumstances are to you in the full capacity. By sharing other people's experiences and difficulties, we hope to bring you a sense of community, a sense of belonging and almost companionship or camaraderie in knowing that you're going through the same struggle as somebody else, or knowing that while everything is so unique to you, that there's a comfort in knowing that you're not the only one. There are people out there, and the more and more we ostracize our personal experiences by thinking that this circumstance, there's no way no one can know what I'm going through. While they don't know the specifics, again, they know how you feel. And we hope to bring you together with people who might be going through those same things with you, talking about those things, how they deal with them, and how they move forward each day, bearing that weight on their shoulders. And cultivating a community of conscious well-being, now that is a mouthful. It sounds nice, but what does it mean? As I touched on in the last point, the community aspect of what it is that we're trying to do is bring people together. The loneliness and isolation and individuality of unique experiences that people go through and endure through mental illness, through difficulties with their mental health, it makes you want to be alone. It makes you feel alone, and we're trying to dispel that. We're trying to say, no, actually, in there being more people like you, we can help and support each other by raising our voices, by sharing how we feel, by talking about our experiences, despite this urge to keep the things to ourselves, to think it might make us a lesser of a person if we share our experience. If I reach out to someone and I'm vulnerable to them, does that make me a weaker person? No, it doesn't. So in creating this community, there are two ways that we're looking at doing it. We're hoping to do one side online, so getting in touch and creating a community around the Airing It Out podcast, where people can chat, where we can find almost a unity in the things that we're all going through. It's a bit of I don't know if it's a paradox, but we're trying to find community in our loneliness, in our problems, in our difficulties. Let's not give in to that. What we're trying to do here is bring people together. Know that you are not alone. Know that you aren't the only one who's going through it, and that there are people that can help you, and maybe one day you can help somebody else from the things that we're hoping to share with you on this podcast. One thing that is worth mentioning now, before we go any further, is that this is not a substitute for professional help. I am not a professional, and I will not claim to provide or prescribe any help that a professional would or would not. What we're doing here is talking about these issues, sharing experiences and human connections. But if you feel as though that you might need something more, or you don't know how to reach out, then we will provide at the end of the show or in the notes different people that we could signpost you towards professional avenues that you can go down to get professional help, because at some point there does become a difference. If you feel that you need that professional help, I cannot say that I can give it to you, but I will gladly always usher you towards the places where you can and say, this might be of better use to you than I can be. Or in addition, stick around, we could be friends. So who am I? What am I doing here? Why am I doing this show? You must have many questions about not only the show, but who is this guy who's presenting it? And I think that's only fair. One of the big aspects or considerations that I've had going into this show is that in order to purvey this idea of honesty, trust, transparency and clarity, particularly as it comes to mental health, the things that come from within us, the difficult things to talk about, there's nothing more true and honest about our lives than the difficulties and sufferings that we experience. So it's my responsibility to instill some kind of trust within you and the people that I'm hoping to speak to on this show. And I intend on doing that by being as open of a book as I can for you. I'm not going to ever hold any secrets. I'm not ever going to tell you a lie. There's a saying that I like, I don't know who it's by, but we will provide the official quote, and that is, the truth is like a lion, set it free and it shall protect itself. And it is a difficult thing to do. It is scary, and I understand that asking you to be honest with me and asking people to come on and be honest is an incredibly difficult thing. But what I want to do is to try and lead by example, by being completely honest with you at all times and never being anything but. Now, we were going to do this in a little section later, but seeing as though I'm talking about it now, we have this little fella. So what I have here is a heart plushie. Now, he's not a love heart plushie, he's a human heart plushie. He has blue veins and purple veins and 2 eyes. A human heart does not have 2 eyes. But what this little fella represents is my heart. This is my vow to my listeners that each and every episode you can expect nothing but the utmost honesty, transparency, and clarity, and that I have your best intentions in my heart as I do this show. It's not a difficult thing to do or to come and speak about. I'll be asking at times for you to voluntarily contribute insights into your own lives, and I'm going to be inviting guests on to talk about their experiences, and that is no easy thing. And yeah, this heart plushie is representative of my commitment to doing the right thing by my listeners, by being open, being honest, and at all times transparent. So for those of you who are listening and not watching, he is going to be on the shelf behind me at all times. If you do want to see him and want to see what he looks like, please feel free to check out one of our videos. He will surely be in the background. He does not have a name for the moment, but a bit down the line, once we have our website set up, I would like for one of you to name him. I'm not sure how we will do that, but at one point, one of you listeners out there will give this little guy a name, and I'm looking forward to that. So for the moment, I'm going to pop him up here on the shelf. Is he in view? He is in view. So here's a little bit about me. This is to show you that I have my own experiences. I'm not an outsider looking in. I can speak to my own experiences, and naturally throughout, as the podcast goes on, and we'll be having these conversations and we'll be taking a bit more of a deep dive into things, I will unpack those things. I will elaborate on my own experiences and talk about them at length. If there are things that you'd like to know about me, questions you might have, please feel free to get in touch and ask them. As I mentioned about transparency, if you have a question, I will do my absolute best to answer it. So I'd say about 6 or 7 years ago, I believe it was September of 2017, however long that was when the real symptoms of my mental illness started to become apparent. I remember the exact place wherein it became real to me that something was wrong. I was doing shifts at a pub. It was absolutely bloody miserable. It was like a pressure cooker for somebody who didn't have much resilience and who was afraid of everything. And yeah, it was a really kind of hostile, it felt like a really hostile and intense environment, and I just went there and I crumbled every time that I went in there. But I never walked out or said, I had a boundary like, this is it, this is enough, I'm going. I was always go there, suffer, and go home. And I remember after one particular shift, I went back, I walked through the back door for some reason. I spoke to my mum, and after however many questions about my day or my shift, she said to me, something's not right with you. Like, that was a moment where she'd taken a particular look at her son and thought, that's not my son. That's not who I knew growing up. That's not who I raised. That's not who I knew to be my son to be. And that began the slow process towards recovery. As I mentioned, it's about 6 or 7 years. So nothing happened overnight, and it didn't come about overnight. There were particular instances of trauma which led to this point, or led to the point in which my problems developed. One of them was drug-induced at a festival. It was absolutely terrifying. It was probably the biggest anxiety attack I've ever had in my life, and that then acted as a catalyst to I think about 1.5 years worth of clinically diagnosed anxiety. Again, I remember the majority of the time in which all of these things took place, because in retrospect they were so poignant to me in my life. They were my defining moments. Yeah, as a brief overview, that was the year that I'd finished high school. This instance of my traumatic experience at a festival happened within that summer. I never did anything about it. I thought once it had happened, once it had gone, that I'd escaped it, but I was always looking over my shoulder, always in the back of my mind. I'd sleep and I'd think about this thing which nearly happened, and don't worry, I will talk about it one day. I don't want to, leave too many questions unanswered, but we will get to that, I promise. The fear was ever present, and it was this fear. I was in anxiety. If I could define it, is almost an infection of fear. There's almost never a moment where you're looking over your shoulder where you don't think something might be there, don't think something might hurt you or do something to just damage you. So after that summer, after that instance, I never really did anything about that thing. I thought it was in my past. It still affects me constantly on the day-to-day, but I enrolled in a creative media course and I began attending that, but I think where everything was new, it was you're going to a new place of education, like going to uni. It's always scary at the beginning. You've got all these new faces, you've got all these new teachers, you've got all these bridges that you have yet to build. And with someone who was at that point undiagnosed with clinical anxiety, all of those challenges which are overcome with time, building new relationships, facing new challenges, new environments, new people, they were all heavily doused with fear. And it was absolutely an irrational fear. But when you're there, when you're feeling it, that fear is the realest thing that you'll experience. That was a very difficult year. There were numerous instances in which I could point to. It just turned my life upside down, and it wasn't one or two instances. It was just the accumulation of little instances. So, for example, there were times where I'd get on the bus to go to college, and I'd sit on the bus, and it would be torture. It would be this ever-encroaching storm of fear, and I'd get off the bus. I'd look at the gate going into college, and I wouldn't be able to bring myself across the threshold of college. I was so terrified. Sometimes I would go into college for a lesson and be like, this is it, I have to go. I ended up dropping out towards the end of that year, and it was one of the single most crushing experiences of my life. I was so close to having gone through it, but it was just an endurance race at that point. It was just a matter of pride for me to see whether or not I could make it. I wanted to make it. I didn't want to drop out. I didn't want this thing to defeat me, but yeah, I had to in the end. And I took some time. I began therapy. I've done 3 different types of therapy: private therapy, then it was CBT, and then it was counselling, so speech therapy. So once I'd re-enrolled with college, I was starting again, and by this time I had begun to overcome my anxiety. I'd had enough therapy and done enough work on it in that this fear no longer ruled my every single day, and that was great. That was a lot of significant progress. However, I don't know what it is that led me down this path, but once I went from one extreme to the other, I went from caring so irrationally and so extremely about every single thing in my day-to-day life, every detail, every person. It was to another scale, the amount of harm that care had caused me. But what had happened in overcoming my anxiety, it went to the complete opposite end of the spectrum. I cared about nothing. I didn't care about college. I didn't care about my education. I didn't care about my friends. I didn't care about myself. Least of all myself. When you don't care about anything, anyone, anytime, or any place, there's no reason to look after yourself. There's no reason to get up in the morning. So everything seems like a futile effort. Everything is just a pointless a pointless task, and why even bother with that task? And I really, really began to hate myself. I, absolutely resented myself. Very, very self-destructive tendencies, behaviors, and it was an incredibly lonely time in my life, because all the times where I didn't care about everything, all the times where I was out with friends or at college, it's easy not to care, it's all blasé and whatnot, who really gives a shit? But when you're on your own, you've never felt any greater distance from anybody than when you do then. It's terribly isolating, and that isolation, is not somewhere that I'd ever want anybody to have to experience. And that was a very deep depression. I went on antidepressants, numerous different kinds of antidepressants over the years, until I found one that kind of worked for me, which was about 3 years into it. But alongside this, I didn't go through them just because of trial and error. Well, let me correct myself, that was trial and error. I'd be prescribed one, take a dosage of one of them. Oh, that's not working. Try another one. That's not working. Take another one. That's not working. Okay, you're now at the limit. We have to try something else. Okay, try that one. Rinse and repeat. It did that 3 times until we got to something where it was like, this stuff is literally going to give you serotonin. It's going to be hard not to be a little bit happier on this. And the reason that I went through all of these antidepressants, the reason why none of them were working, ended up building me up to my rock bottom. And the rock bottom was the turning point for me in my life, because it got to the point where I had to make a decision. And unfortunately, it was a bit of a grave decision. I could either keep going down this path, and I was beginning to have the conversations with myself and beginning to make plans of how I'd end up taking my own life, or I could begin to do something about it. And that was fucking terrifying. That was a scary thought. But where that thought came from was, it's been so long. I've had these years of therapy, private therapy, years of CBT. I've been through 3 different medications. I've gone to the legal limit of most of them. My family and my friends have never stopped supporting me, but nothing's getting better. Things aren't improving. And I realised that, I'd waited and relied on everybody else to help me until I realised there was nothing else left. There was nothing else left to help me. There was nothing that nobody could give me or hadn't already tried to give me that would make things better. And that was a hard realisation, that if things were going to get better, they were going to have to come from me. And that began the turning point in my life, when I thought, okay, the choice is either take my own life or start making an effort, start trying, start digging yourself out from the absolute pit that you have found yourself in, that you have put yourself in. And that's not self-loathing or self-pity, whether I liked it or not. Regardless of how I thought about it, I was at my rock bottom. Like, it was either make or break. I've got so many visions and memories and experiences of that time in my life, some of them so absolutely insignificant, but I remember exactly where I was, the time that I was, and the things that I was feeling, and associated memories with them. But I started to climb upwards. I started to push back against everything which I'd let steadily get heavier and heavier and heavier on top of me. And it was fucking hard. I don't mind telling you that. There's no real easy thing about it. There's no, right, I've started making the right decision, so if I just keep going, it'll be fine. No, it is hard work to get up there, to climb back up that mountain. It, like, the way that I describe it is climbing back up a mountain just to get on to flat land. Because, you've gone down there. You've gone down. There is a light at the top, but it will take a bit of legwork to get up there. So yeah, ever since then, that was 4 years ago, that I started pushing back, that I started resisting, that I started doing right by me, doing the things that I wanted to do. Or basically, once I'd reached my rock bottom, I was just like, this is an opportunity. I've never felt so little of myself left in my entire being than I have now. So in some ways, you could perceive the person that I was is no more. And here is an opportunity to rebuild myself in the likeness of who I've always wanted to become. And that, it was so empowering, because I thought, right, well, who do I want to be? Who do I want to become? What are the things and the values which I look up to, which I aspire to attain and I admire within other people? So you look at all these people and you think, yeah, okay, right, I like that about this person, and I admire this person, and steadily over time, those are the building blocks upon which you build the person that you wanted to become. And no, I'm still working on that. I've not gotten to a point when I'm like, hey guys, I've done it, I've won, I've become that person, I'm here, hey. No, it's an everyday effort, but it is the small accumulation of those efforts over time. Since that time, we're not done there. It's not all been plain sailing. I didn't start I didn't start building myself in the idea of who I wanted to be, and then it's all clear sailing on open water. No, it's definitely been hard, because once I realised who I wanted to be, it was no longer a matter of just embodying that person, becoming that person. It was now, I have to do hard things to get there, in order to be that person, in order to, build these skills and develop these characteristics. I have to do particular things. I have to challenge myself. I have to test myself. I have to see whether or not I'm capable of doing this. If I'm not, back to the drawing board, try again, and keep at it. And it's definitely not been as intense, but it's like an everyday struggle. There rarely goes a day where you don't face something difficult that you don't want to do, or that you don't feel up to doing, but it's just the perseverance of doing that. And yeah, my mental illness has not left me. I've overcome my anxiety, I can say that now. However, with depression, I think I've come to terms with the fact that it is something that will always be a part of me, and I have to learn how to move forward with it day to day, learn to deal with it, learn tips and tricks of what I can do that help me to manage it, because as I've said, I've accepted it's a part of who I am. I might not ever shake it. I might go to my grave with it being a part of me, but I will not let it define me, and I will not let it beat me. The fight doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. You don't get to one point and something clicks and this thing in your head goes away forever. Every day you keep going, you keep pushing back, and you keep pushing forward. That's a brief overview of who I am. There's so much I could talk about, and as you can see next to my heart, I've got 3 of my journals there. Now, journaling is a whole box in itself that we could unpack, and I intend to. But those 3 journals document my thoughts, my feelings over the past 3 or so years. All of them encompass goals, difficulties, struggles. Sometimes when I'm having a really shit day, really struggling with just being me, that I take it to my journal, because some days it is that, there's no other real way to put it. Then I say to my mum frequently, today's just fucking hard to be me, to be who I am, and that it feels very, like I mentioned earlier, unique and individual, but I know that I'm not the only one out there who feels like that. But yeah, in the future, rest assured, you'll find out more about me, who I am, the detail of the struggles that I've been through, and all the steps that I took along the way to be who I am now. And an insight as to where I'm going, because my journey has not stopped. I'm not stopping. My struggle will not stop. But hopefully you can be there with me along the way. Okay, bloody hell, that was heavier than I was expecting. This is a first episode. Welcome to the shit show. So we're going to try to keep the rest of it a little bit lighter. You know, this isn't just a celebration of misery. As I mentioned, we are trying to cultivate a community of conscious well-being, but that is also pushing for the positive things. It's also looking at what's good in life, what we're grateful for, what we're happy to be about, what we're happy to be living for. But we'll touch on that later. I wanted to talk a little bit now about, you know, what is the podcast? What can you as a viewer expect? If you were to show in next week, please do. This is the kind of thing that you can expect to see. So one thing that I'm really looking forward to doing is interactive surveys. So once we have a website or some kind of domain which we can post all of these questions, that gives you as the viewer an opportunity to write in and contribute to this community of well-being. It is an opportunity, whether it be positive, negative, insightful, something that's just fucked you off about today. We want to include you in all of this that we're doing. We want you to have a voice just as much as somebody that we might have on the podcast, or like myself. One of the things that we're trying to achieve by having guests on is that we want to be having the conversations, the difficult conversations. As I mentioned at the top of the show, we're going to try and be vulnerable and have the difficult conversations to show you that it's not only okay to be vulnerable and that it requires strength to be vulnerable rather than the opposite, but also that almost this is how you can do it if you wanted to. Because I know as a man, talking about your emotions and being vulnerable isn't something that you're exactly inherently handed down. No one's ever going to be like, if you ever get into like a shit situation, this is how you talk about it. This is how you share your experience with somebody else. This is how you approach somebody and say, I've actually been having a bit of a tough time with it lately. No one's going to teach you that, because as a man, it's, you know, always chin up and soldier on. And that's it. It's not sustainable anymore. All right, I'm going to put my hands up. It doesn't work anymore. There are too many men out there who, the bottom line of it boils down to too many people are taking their own lives. Too many people don't know how to deal with what's going on in their hearts and minds. Too many people are scared to reach out. Too many people are afraid of judgment, and too many people don't have a place in this world. And one of the single greatest things that I've learned throughout my experience with mental illness and health is the strength and power of talking to people, of being open. It is definitely a skill, do not get me wrong. It will take some time, but hopefully we can lead you down that path, or we can at least give you examples of what those conversations are going to be like. We're not going to be having easy, nonchalant conversations that you might have down the pub or on a break at work. These are going to be open, they're going to be difficult, and they're going to come from, you know, places that people don't often look to have conversations with, particularly on camera. So we hope that by having these conversations, there's something that you might be able to take away in your own life. If you're struggling, if you've got something to say but you don't know how to say it, or you don't know how to find your voice in approaching somebody, yeah, hopefully we can do something to change that. One of the things that we're going to have as an addition to this show is weekly challenges and weekly almost tasks or homework that you can take and participate in at home or in your own time. Now, these are completely voluntary, so you do not have to feel obligated in any way. There is no pressure or stress to do these, but the reason I'm doing these things is because these are tried and tested things which have helped or worked for me, or have studies behind them, or have worked throughout history. These are like keynote things which could be steps forward in the right direction. You know, these are tried and tested things which could help to make your everyday a little bit better. So, first exercise for this week, we're going to hit the ground running. This one is oriented around gratitude, and gratitude is something that I practice ideally twice a day. It's always without fail once a day, and it is taking a time within your day, whether it's easiest to do it when you're on your own, whether you've got some private time and you can have that freedom to think and to feel as well. So you could be on a walk, you could be in your car on your way to work, it could just be before bed. And what gratitude is, it's consciously recognizing the things in your life which contribute to it being a bit better, or something that you're thankful for, something, whether it be a part of your day or just your life in general, that you are giving some of your time to be appreciative of. Let's have a look. So what are the things that I'm grateful for? Today, I'm grateful for my crew. I'm grateful for Adam and Ryan, because without them, none of this would really have been possible. Those two have really, really picked this up and given me a refreshed belief in what it is that we're trying to do here. I'm grateful for the support of the people around me. They have kept me going and reassured me that the path that I'm on is one that I'm not going to get lost down. And if I do get lost, I know that I have them to be there for me when I need them to be. And I'm grateful for the fact that I want to help people. I'm grateful for the fact that I have something within me, whatever it is, I do not know, that makes me want to help people. And so what I want you to do is to pick 5 things each day, maybe 3 if you're struggling. And I'd like for you to either say them out loud, as I have just done, or I'd like for you to write them down. Now, the key with these 2 things is that you're not keeping them up here. You are generating what it is that you're grateful for, but in writing it down or saying it out loud, it is taking it from here and getting it out. It is either getting it out or giving it to the world. You can take your pick, but it gets it out from your mind and onto something. And there's something within that process which not only alleviates your mind of this thing, but in essence, it kind of gives it to the world, and you've put it out there. You've done that. So I'd like for you to practice that 3 or 4 times, 3 or 4 things every day if you can, and tell me how you get on. It could be the smallest thing, it could be the biggest thing in your life. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just taking time to say, hey, you know what? I like that. I'm glad that that's a part of my life. Yeah, let me know how you get on. So we'll be going through your experiences and responses to the weekly challenge on our Instagram page, which is @airingitpod. If you have a look for us there, hopefully you'll not only have given the exercise a go, but you might have written in or have something to share with us. And then once you have, hopefully you'll hear about it on our social page. So yeah, appreciate you. Thank you for getting involved. Oh, okay, right. So we are at the end of the intro. We are at the outro of the intro episode of the Airing It Out podcast. And it's raw, it's rough, but that is essentially the essence of what I wanted this episode to be. It's not perfect. It is rough around the edges. I have stuttered, I have stammered and caught up on my words, but I wasn't going to let the fear of getting it wrong and it not being perfect ever stop me from doing that. That was one of the things which really kept me going, was because of all the things that I've done, this podcast scared me. And because it scared me, because it was something that gave me that reaction, it gave me butterflies in my stomach, I knew that it was something that I needed to do. So here we are, having done it. Nerve-wracking, difficult to articulate on camera, difficult to speak to a camera when there's no one around, knowing that there are other people on the other side of it. But here we are. This is the first step, and yeah, I know that next time it might not be as rough, it might not be as raw, it might be a bit more refined, but if we keep going at it, I'm sure we'll get there together. So if you're interested in getting involved with us here at the Airing It Out podcast, there are a couple ways. We want to be as interactive with you guys as we can. So please feel free to explore one of our couple avenues in which you can do that. We have our social media pages at Airing It Pod, or you can visit us on our website at www.airingitoutpodcast.com. Please don't feel, I know it's a scary thing to ask, but if you have something to share, or you have something you want to say, or a bit of feedback, a bit of advice, a bit of anything, just let us know. Drop us a line and we'll be more than receptive and more than grateful. Thank you for everything. If you've made it to the end, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you sticking it out and seeing it through, so thank you. Hopefully we've given you enough reason to join us on the next episode. So until then, goodbye. This has been a Common Bird production.